Would you consider yourself a high-level entrepreneur? Now, most likely, if you're listening to this, you definitely are. And what I've heard over and over and over again is it's hard to find like-minded people that are like that too. Again, I'm from Maine, so I totally understand how difficult it can be. Thank goodness I have an amazing online community, so I know tons of them. And that is exactly why we are starting this brand new mastermind group with high-level, like-minded entrepreneurs, the ones that you can go alongside with that will help move you to the next level, let alone with kick butt coaching from me, because I like to slap you around, both on focus and on strategy. So if you're looking to double or triple this year, which I know most of you are, I want you to go ahead and apply and see if it's a good fit for you. I will totally tell you if it's not and if I wouldn't do it if I were you. But go to eventualmillionaire.com/apply. We are looking for amazing, like-minded entrepreneurs. My previous mastermind members have told me it is life changing. So take the time today, fill out the very quick application, and we'll see if it's a fit. Take care.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to The Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jamie Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I'm Jamie Masters, and we have Eric Siu on the show. He has two podcasts. One's called the Marketing School Podcast, which is amazing. Growth Everywhere Podcast is the other one. He's the agency owner of singlegrain.com, which is an amazing agency that's hosted companies like Uber and Lyft and Nordstrom's, and the list of companies is insane. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jamie.
I loved seeing the list of all of the companies that you had. I was like, really? You have so many high-level people. Can you really pare it down for us when we're small business owners, when we're used to working with enterprise so much? Do you feel like it's congruent?
I mean, it's different. Is your question more centered around how is it working with enterprises?
Well, I'm just wondering how different it is, right? So when you start giving us feedback when we don't have budgets of, $70 million for marketing, how different is it?
I think it's actually easier working with the companies that do have the budgets because they have a lot more resources and they have the money. Yeah. Now, when you're working with literally someone that's just starting up out of a garage, they're a lot more. They need a lot more help, a lot more handholding, and then they're going to pay you a lot less. So it's more headaches. That obviously, I mean, having said that, you have to start somewhere in the beginning. I like working with the larger companies more. And as you get bigger and bigger, as you can become quote unquote more successful with it, you can start to kind of block out who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with. I think that's the beauty of it.
Well, and what I love about a company like yours is you do not just Facebook marketing, you do lots of different modalities, and knowing what that is, you can look at the scope of everything. So one of the things that I want to really dive deeper into is how do we choose which path to go down? In marketing, there's so many different paths. And when you don't have a huge marketing budget, trying to figure out which one is the best way to go first is difficult. So do you have any tips on some of that stuff?
Yeah. So you're asking more around how should someone start with this, right? So my feedback on, because there's so many different subjects around marketing. My specialty was back in the day when I first started learning marketing was SEO and content marketing, which is why I still harp on it today. And use one of the foundations. So if I'm good at SEO and content marketing, that's my base, that's my foundation. Then I might learn other stuff. I might become a well-oiled T-shaped marketer where I know a lot of different marketing kind of tactics and strategies, but I'm deep on one, which is SEO and content. So I stay with that foundation and then I learn more, and then I build on top of that foundation, right? So it's not like try everything at once. And then after that, now I'm good at SEO and content. Now I can layer on the paid side. I can layer on the email side, and everything becomes much stronger because I'm taking this omni-channel approach, which is something I talk a lot about on the Marketing School podcast with my buddy Neil.
Yeah, with Neil Patel, who's also been on the show, and everybody knows him in marketing big time. And
Awesome.
I guess that's sort of the question then too. So how did you pick which one to go down? So especially for a business owner that doesn't have a lot of time to be going down each marketing channel and going, I want to learn this piece. How do they pick which one to go after sort of second? Maybe not first. Maybe they have something that's working pretty good. What's choice number two?
Yeah, I think it's what resonates with you. So like that's something that's like, okay, if you're good at video, you start with video first, and what's next? That makes sense. Audio is the path of least resistance, because if you can do 100% of a video, guess what? You already have 100% of audio already. So the next step is maybe you can repurpose it into a podcast, and people might think, oh, there's so much podcasts out there, but I think it doesn't matter where you are. You always have something unique to say, whoever you are in the world. And yeah, so whatever resonates with you, B, whatever's the path of least resistance next. Like if you like writing, great. So think about how you can convert that into audio next, right? And then think about where your audience is too. It's tough. A lot of people, like I just came off of mentoring a group of students on a Zoom call, and they're just asking like, what channel should we go with first, right? They're asking. It's like it's easy for people to give all these blanket statement answers, but I think if you figure out what resonates with you, and then you understand where your audience is actually hanging out, I think those are the things that matter.
Okay, that's what I want to dive into, because you're right. Because people go, which channel? And then they randomly go, I'm just going to pick YouTube because it's hot right now,
Yep.
even though I hate doing video or whatever the pieces
Yeah.
are. So once we find one that resonates, so let's say it is something like starting a podcast. How do you know if your audience is there or not, though? Is there metrics or tests that you can do to try and actually find out some of this information?
Yeah. So I mean, you can always look at your metrics to see if your traffic is growing. But the one thing I will say is it's been a long, hard slog with the first podcast I did with the Growth Everywhere, the podcast. And I think we talked about this. We talked about this a while back. And the Growth Everywhere podcast, my God, the first year I was only getting 9 downloads a day. And then after the second year, I was only getting 30 downloads a day. So it's a long, hard slog. It takes time. You can look at the metrics; it's going up. But the one thing I like to call out is your, and I learned this from someone else, the unsolicited response rate. So your URR. If you have people emailing you, tweeting at you, saying how amazing it is, and you find that you're learning from it, and you're getting better, and it's actually adding to your business. Like I was talking to business leaders on the podcast, and you do too. Well, I'm going to keep doing it. And then that's led to it to continue to stack up. And now it's growing faster than it ever has. So there's that.
So what made you not stop after year one? Because podcasting is interesting. It takes a lot of work also. So if you're not seeing a lot of results and you're an ROI driven marketer, I get that you are and you're getting a few responses, but if you're not getting sales and you're spending that much time, I'm surprised you didn't cut it off quicker.
I should have cut it. The thing is, the thing with entrepreneurship is that you have to be persistent, and I was persistent with it. And to answer your question, I was getting value because I was talking with amazing people that have had their own success, and I was selfishly asking questions, struggles that I was going through, and they were basically solving it by the experience shares. So I'm in this group, and anyone should join a peer group. So I'm in this group called Entrepreneurs Organization, and there's this thing called the Gestalt Protocol where people will share experiences versus giving advice. And so I was like, I'm just going to keep doing that over and over and over, when I should have shut it down because I just took over Single Grain, my agency at the time, and it was already a failing company. Stacking on something that required 6 to 8 hours of additional time per week was not a good use of my time. I did it anyway because I felt I was getting the things I needed to help grow and save the business ultimately.
And save the business. Oh, and but it's intangible. And that's the thing that's so interesting, because I love ROI driven people, right? Companies too, but people. But some stuff is intangible. And like in your head, you're like, okay, I am getting return on investment of this time, but who knows how long it's going to take, because we can't directly track it. So tell me about how you bought a failing agency, which was very interesting. You bought that sounds like a smart thing to do, right? Most people would be like, let's buy a failing one. And how'd you turn it around?
Yeah. So Neil Patel's cousin, Sujin Patel, he's the original founder of Single Grain. And we all talk, by the way, like all the original partners, we still talk. So there was 5 people. It was 4 Indian people and then myself, one Asian person. And then coming into it, so previously I was leading marketing at a company called Treehouse. And Neil said, hey, look, can you come help this company? And it was a SEO company, and at the time, the Panda and the Penguin updates hit. So, anyone that knows SEO, like it made it a lot harder to do SEO because it was a lot easier back in the day. So I thought it would be an interesting challenge for myself to see if I could save something that was headed in the wrong direction because of the Google algorithm updates.
Wow.
And a year into it, so I joined as basically like the number 2, the COO of the company. Basically, everyone wanted out, and I said, "Hey, you know what? I think I can turn it around. Let's continue." So we tried to change it into a content marketing company. First year, I had no idea what I was doing. Completely lost my shirt. Doesn't matter. All the podcasts you listen to, all the books that you read, it's nothing beats the experience. We dropped all the way down to 1 employee, and the whole thing was about to fold. And slowly but surely, like all the things that we're doing started to build up, and it started to hit at the right time. Like our blog started to grow, it started to generate more leads. All of a sudden, we're ranking well for a bunch of keywords, and then we were able to save the company, and we converted it eventually into a company focused on paid media, and we eventually brought our SEO and content marketing services back. But I mean, I've been at this company for 6 years, been running it for 5 years.
Wow. Okay. So go you for taking a challenge. You're like,
Thank you.
it's a sinking ship. Let me go down with it, or hopefully not. Right? Like that's very, very gutsy. Number one. What made you switch from content back then? Because especially if you were the content guy, and you're still the content guy, like you still talk about that. Was it just because SEO was so crappy you had to switch to the paid side because nobody wanted to go down that path, or you couldn't get results? Like, what was the reason?
We couldn't, the work we were doing in the past, so a lot of our work was focused on link building, and back in the day, it was very easy to rank for anything. And I saw this from a mile away. I actually saw what the company was doing, and I actually didn't have interest in it. I was like, this is going to go away.
Yeah, it was very gray hatty and black hatty at the time. You could do whatever you wanted, right?
Yeah, you can do anything and it'll rank, right? Yeah. And so I was like, sorry, your question again was, why did I decide to come into the company?
Well, why'd you end up taking off the content side? Why'd you just go to paid?
So, we, the SEO work wasn't working anymore. So the natural progression, the next step would be, okay, we have this current staff right now that knows SEO, and it's like, okay, like trying to switch them over into paid media is going to be a very hard switch. So switching into content marketing might be a good thing that we can do. And it seemed like a logical play because everything was going towards, content marketing. The problem was, I tried to, I read all these books about, being hands off, let your people go surfing, all these things. And I tried to be completely hands off. That was a mistake on my part. I made a couple of drastic changes, and, I'll take the blame for it. And that's how like the content operation didn't work out. But we did have really great people. And eventually I was just like, okay, once we dropped down to one employee, I was like, okay, let's switch it to paid media. Because what we started to see was, when we dropped down to one employee, I started to refer the leads out, and what we would see the agencies continue to close paid media leads, and they just wouldn't retain them for a long time. So that was like, okay, let's see if we can do this agency thing again, because I was basically reserved to, I was like okay with letting the leads, refer the leads out and collect like a 25 to 30%, commission on it.
Wow. Okay. So you've come a long way in this too, because you've not only added all the other stuff in the back end, you're doing lots of larger scale stuff too. So when you look at paid media, it's funny because you think of the Panda and Penguin update. Yeah. I had clients in that space that was it closed businesses.
Devastating.
Right? It was insane. And now this whole Facebook stuff is coming up and everybody's freaking out, right? So to me, there's lots of marketing tactics, and I've sort of been a geek for so long. I see the shifts of things. But what do you tell people when they're like freaking out about Facebook right now and how everything's changing and costs are going up and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, I think going back to the omni-channel approach, it's being in multiple places where you don't have to. I think once you specialize in one area of marketing and it starts to work out well, diversify as quickly as you can. So then you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Like, I was just reading before we got on the call, like you talked about people getting their businesses destroyed. DMV.org and IRS.com, which are not affiliated with the government organizations, their traffic dropped by 85 to 90%. That's a business just completely going away. And this is recent too. So completely relying on SEO is like, if you rely completely on SEO and then you talk about how SEO is like, the holy grail, I know that you haven't thought about the long term because you haven't thought about how like these things can happen to you, right? So, if you go to SEO, like if you look at, let's use Neil as an example. He's got SEO, he's got the podcast with me, he's got a YouTube channel. His Instagram right now is growing too. He's everywhere, right? You look at Gary Vee, he's everywhere. So if you can take this omni-channel approach, then you don't need to worry about losing one channel when you can stand on the others.
What are you seeing as far as trends go? I loved how you said, well, I saw that the SEO thing was going to take a tank. Are you seeing other trends in marketing that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Rand Fishkin wrote a post on marketing trends the other day, and my thoughts on this are like, okay, everyone talks about AI this, AI that, and yes, it is important. I think especially in the next 5 to 10 years, like if you're not a data company, I think you're going to be left behind because everything feeds into this engine, this you call it AI engine, whatever. So I do think there's validity in that. I think people just need to define what it means actually. People talk about voice search. I still think it's in its infancy. I only use it for like the weather right now. So there's that. And what else? I think there's a lot more, again, going back to data, a lot more automation coming. So a lot of the work that, people are doing on the paid media side, it's very hard to beat a machine when it's just based on patterns and numbers and algorithms. So just, there's that. And then what else? I think, you talk about pay to play. So these platforms, that's their model. I think that's an Achilles heel, especially for Americans, because if you look at the Chinese, right? Everything they do, they do a better job of monetizing consumer products. There's actually a video from Andreessen Horowitz, a girl named Connie Chan. She did this report, and do you know how Jamie? I'm sure you know the numbers. Do you know how big the podcast market is in the United States, like in terms of dollars?
Oh, I can't remember, but yes, it's very large and growing, right?
Okay, so 314 million is the U.S. Now, here's the thing: in China, it's 3 billion. So it's 10x more. Why did the Chinese do such a better job of monetizing? Well, here's the thing. It's the business models. If you look at Facebook and you look at Google, they're advertising models, right? Advertising driven, which means their incentive is just continue to raise the prices higher and higher. And that's how it works, right? So it's going to be more pay to play unless they change their business model. So I think, the stuff we talk about today, content, SEO, like I still think it's relevant in the next 5 to 10 years. The way we're doing it right now, I don't think much of it's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so everybody feels at least a little safer, but 5 years is still not very long. As a side note, right?
It's not. It's fast. Yeah.
So and that's the thing when we're so focused on or whatever we're doing right now to try and hit whatever the goals are currently, we sort of get in this tunnel mode where we're like, oh, there's stuff going on outside my little SEO bubble or whatever the bubble is that we're in. So when we're talking about, for example, I think about podcast advertising. That does not see it should. To me, it should be a lot bigger than it really is. Like the way that it's crazy. So what do you see in terms of that? Have you guys been testing it? Is that something that you've seen? Can you give me some info on that?
Yeah, I think so. That's a good one to call out. I think that's going to be a big trend in the next 5 to 10 years. Because if you look at Spotify, they just spent like $300 million plus buying Gimlet and Anchor. They're going all in on podcasts because Apple hasn't taken action on it. Apple still can do it right now, but they haven't taken action.
I shouldn't say that because people are probably listening to this on Apple, but still, yes. Tell me more.
So Spotify, I mean, they're number 2 in the space right now, and I'm sure you have your podcast on Spotify too. We're finding that our podcast is growing pretty quickly on Spotify. So we're just gonna, I mean, it's like free to publish there anyway. So we're gonna continue to do that, and then hopefully they come out with a lot more monetization options aside from ads. I'm hoping there's like some subscription stuff that will come out too. I think podcasting is gonna change quite a bit. You've been doing it for a while. I've been doing it for a while. We've been longing for more. I think Spotify should just copy what the Chinese are doing from a podcast standpoint, where there's like built-in Patreon where you can you can donate, you can add like subscriptions to like a premium channel too. It just becomes a lot. The functionality is not hard to add, and I think Spotify is going to take over because they know they can make a lot more money off of the podcasting versus paying big DJs or big music artists on their because the licensing deals are so expensive, right? So there's a lot more profit to be made for them in that space.
Well, and what's just as a marketer, what is so annoying is Apple's slow, or any I mean, there's a bazillion different third-party apps and stuff like that, but it's just so slow to actually input anything that creates integration. So we actually have a back and forth. It's like, here's a podcast, listen to it, have fun. So we as creators can only do so much. Are you guys investing in ads on other people's podcasts, or what do you think about growing the podcast? I know you said you've been doing it and it's been growing, but what have you been actually doing to grow it?
Yeah. So what we've been doing, I'll tell you what worked for us. So we did try buying some ads on Overcast, which is a third-party podcast app. So I use that one. It's a lot faster on iOS than the regular podcast app. That we paid like $1,500. We didn't get much results from that. I think maybe we got like 100 clicks or something like that. What worked for us, and this is not going to be as helpful, is obviously Neil has a very big audience, and then we blast it to our email list. We our mutual friend John Lee Dumas, he does it every day, right? And that's definitely helped us compound quite a bit. So, if you want to do a podcast every day, if you want to go in a different direction than other people, you want to zig where other people zag, or zag where they zig, try to do a daily one, 5 to 10 minutes. That's what's worked for us. Obviously we kind of cheated because we had a list already. We've tried paid promotion as well in terms of Facebook ads. That doesn't work that well because we're not driving them to an offer. We haven't monetized our podcast, so we don't run any sponsorships or anything like that. And then the final thing I'll say is we set this goal of hitting 1 million downloads per month on our podcast, which we broke a couple months ago.
Congrats.
And thank you. And we told our audience, we said, hey, look, if you guys rate, review, subscribe, and then also just share with everyone. Once we hit 1 million downloads, we're going to do this live event in downtown LA. We're going to do it June 29th now since we broke it. And that actually helped with the growth. We didn't think it was going to happen, but the growth actually started to spike up because we put an offer in front of them and we incentivized them to help grow the podcast.
It's not logical, I guess. When you think of what it should be, when you start a podcast and you're like, oh, okay, we want to get more listeners. And you're saying that the URR, right? That's more important than anything else. And yet, paid advertising doesn't work. This doesn't work. It's a weird thing. So having especially media creators or people that were wanting to do that, it's like, okay, I'll put a sponsorship first. Then it goes to the podcast. Maybe they listen to it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they come to my podcast. It's like so many levels and you don't even know if you have any ROI at the bottom. Like nobody's doing it because of those things. But I feel like it's got to change because you've got people's attention in a way at the podcast side, in a way where you're in someone's ear, not even just on YouTube and watching, where they really feel connected to you. I just am so surprised that it hasn't changed better and faster. And are you using a lot more of the media in the metric side? Like, who are you guys using for hosting, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we use the same. Well, maybe not. We use Libsyn, and so Libsyn's always been kind to us. I don't know what you use right now, but no incentive for us to move as of yet.
Well, it was interesting because there was a whole changeover on what counted as, on Libsyn specifically, what counted as a view versus not. So when people do have sponsorships, when that whole shakeup came, it was a little bit crazy too. So it's cool to hear that you guys have been growing, but it's also kind of annoying that it's like you guys have 1 million downloads a month and you can't give me a really solid, hardcore way to grow an audience. You're like, oh, I have an email list and I have, you know what I mean, to grow your podcasting audience.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that we did, let's see, what else did we do? Oh, we did. I mean, this is the typical advice that you hear from everyone though. Like it's, oh, you know what? Ask for ratings, reviews at the end. And once we started to actually read people's reviews, our reviews started to go up. That's been helpful for us.
That's so funny. It's so old school, and I haven't done it in forever. But that's a really valid point.
Because people always want like the new tactics, right? Yeah. And it's just like, a lot of the stuff is it's just business as usual, and it's just kind of sticking around for longer. And then that's how you reach a lot of listeners or visitors to your site.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of trends on YouTube? Do you guys do anything? I know you do content on YouTube and everything, but are you seeing anything on the paid side for YouTube or any of that?
Yeah. I mean, paid is great for... Okay, so there's like a bunch of things that I'm trying to distill. I was just at this, we did this mastermind in Tulum the other day, and one guy is really good at video. His name's Kong. He runs a company called Jump Cut, and he knows how to make... I cringe when people say viral videos, but he actually knows how to do that. So his is just about constantly optimizing, what the hook is, right? So how do you say something that's shocking? So for example, he made, there's this product for women called Flex, and basically it's something that prevents you from, he made the benefit centered around mess-free period sex, which is something that like gets people's attention, right? Yep. Whereas like it was a boring product before that kind of, helps you with your period or whatever. But like he's good at, making things that are controversial to get people's attention. Now, if you add in, there's another guy that was in the group too. His name's Walter. He does a lot of performance media for people. And what he constantly looks for is the drop off. Like, you look at your retention in YouTube, you look where people are dropping off the most. And then he might add in like a little video clip here, like a little video clip here. And the retention just stays a lot longer. And his ads perform much better because he's able to keep optimizing like that. So I think YouTube is great. I think, the targeting is awesome. You can target keywords. specific channels. And if you optimize like that, if you think about it in that way around the numbers, I think you're going to be successful for the long term.
See, it's all about actually going in and doing it, though. Like we were talking about before, it was going to be kite surfing and gone, and you sort of abdicated your business. And when we start going into all the potential marketing topics and optimization, a business owner can get like super overwhelmed. There's too much. So they'll hire an agency, but agencies cost a lot of money too, especially when you're a smaller, like low 7-figure business. It's hard to put in a ton of cash. So when we look at what somebody should do with a smaller marketing budget, should they hire an agency? Should they, especially on this YouTube stuff, those guys are amazing at what they do, right? And they've done it before. But if I'm trying to learn how to do that, it's a pain because I've been trying to learn more YouTube stuff, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of nuances to it, right? So what do we do?
Yeah. So if I gave a general answer here, I think the general answer would be if you're starting out and you don't have the time to do it yourself, you're generating some revenue, I would actually focus on hiring. Someone younger, someone that's junior, someone that's hungry. There's a lot of these apprenticeship programs, like the call that I just got off of right now. It's a marketing apprenticeship program. They have these for developers. They have them for designers too. You take someone that's humble, hungry, and smart, and you train them well, and they'll stay with you longer, and then your costs aren't going to be that high, and they're committed to your business. Agency wise, you're going to pay them a larger fee because they have their hard costs. They're not going to be focused on you, and you're going to be put into a process, which is fine, but it's never going to be satisfying enough to you because you are the small business owner and you always want things to go faster, and you think I'm coming from the owner side of things. It's like you think they're a part of your business and you demand much more of them, and then
sometimes they're crappy clients for exactly. No offense. I can see why at the beginning you're like, so enterprise, they have the money, they have the time, they're way a million times more ideal clients. That being said, the small business owners are like, I'm investing all this money. It needs to make, right? There's so much more risk on it. So I love that idea of getting an apprentice. Though what's interesting, what are those can you send us a list maybe later of some of those programs that you're talking about? Just because people will put it on Craigslist or I'm dating myself, Odesk, Upwork, right? But it's hard to find the ones that are actually good. Especially
I could give a couple right now.
That'd be great.
So there's a site called weworkremotely.com. That one's great. And then let's see what else there's a job board on growthhackers.com. That's where marketers go. There's a really good Slack group for SEO, content marketers, just marketers in general. Really, really well done. It's called Traffic Think Tank. That's about $199 a month. I think it's worth it because you can find people on there. There's a job section. And so you can also chat with people and see if they're a fit. One thing you could do too is if you have on LinkedIn, like I just did this today, we're looking for a new operations person. You can just say, hey, look, tag the best person you know in SEO, tag the best person you know in paid media, and it'll just start to generate engagement, and you can just, kind of cherry pick from there.
Nice. I appreciate that. And hopefully not all of them are business owners, or if they are, they suck at selling and hate working with crappy clients, and you can steal them too. You'd be surprised. What about, so it's funny because we were chatting about YouTube, and this is the thing that is annoying to me in general also, the vanity subscriber metrics and how much actual engagement. So when you were talking about you only had a handful of podcast people that were downloading it, but they were super, super engaged. I have a friend that has 2.2 million subscribers on YouTube, but maybe gets 50,000 views a video-ish. Right? So they build and build and build. And then they're like, don't get me wrong, 50,000 views on a video is really good. And it's not 2.2. So I just feel like there's disparities in subscriber numbers and what actual engagement is. Are you seeing any things having to do with that or a better way to work with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're still kind of very nascent on the YouTube side of things. I mean, we were at like 17 or 18,000 subscribers, so it's nothing. But I will say that our consistency, we're consistently trying to test out new headlines, new thumbnails, things like that. But it's helpful for us. I think for small business owners, if you're going to do YouTube, I think it's helpful because the people that you have that actually view your channel, let's say it's, maybe it's 10,000 people a month or whatever. You can still retarget them, and it's very cheap to do so. And it's great because they've already built a relationship with you because they've seen not only your face, but they hear you. And they've gotten value from you. So I like it from that perspective.
Okay. So building the beginning parts of the relationship and then making it more of a deeper relationship as we go along, which is what marketing is in general anyway. So you're just doing it on multiple platforms then too.
Yep.
Awesome. I love this. So when we look at what you did as an agency, because I have a lot of agency clients and stuff like that too. And one of the things that I liked about your website was this is what a typical agency will say. This is what we say, right? Where you're distinguishing yourself. What are the best tactics and tips that you found to grow the agency so you can work with the bigger level enterprise clients?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, I mean, so what we do now, actually, here's something that everyone on the consulting or agency side could do. There's a book out there called Win Without Pitching. And it's a book that teaches you how to price based on value. I think the sooner you can figure out how to price based on value and not, charge based on hours, I think you're going to free yourself in the long term. Because if you help someone make $10 million and you can guarantee it, why can't they just pay you $1 million? So obviously, you can work back from there, and then there's a lot more nuances to that, a lot more questions you can ask. But I think that goes a long way. So that book is really helpful. And then, what I would say too is, people are going to ask you like why your agency is different. And so, people talk about niching down and everything. And it's important to niche down. But niching down doesn't just mean one. Sometimes you can go up to 2 niches or 3 or 4, but don't go beyond 4. Okay. Then it becomes too much and you're not really niching down. But that way it's not going to get crazy where you sign a bunch of clients that are all in different industries and your people get overwhelmed. I think that's really important to take a look at. The other thing too, like, people, pay a lot of lip service to culture, hiring, and all that. I think it's very, very important. So don't just disregard it just because everyone's saying it. Just because everyone's saying it doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything. And that's the one advantage you can have is if you have an amazing culture, you have where people want to come into work. Then guess what? They're incentivized to stay because even though other big companies will pay more money, you have a way better working environment. And then if you can get people to retain longer, that's going to help your business grow faster because they understand your business. But if you keep having turnover and you think it's just all about the work and acquiring more clients and making money, that's not going to help you for the long term. It's all about people at the end of the day. If you take care of your people first and then you take care of your clients, you're going to go a long way.
I love this. And yes, culture is sort of like, have a culture, but it's really, really important, even in a small business. How many employees do you guys have right now?
Yeah, 34.
Okay. So what tips do you have on culture? Do you have any books or recommendations? Because 34 is an amazing number where people are like, that's quite a few, but you must have had to start with the culture at 10 or before that. So that way you could build up the right values.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple books. I mean, Powerful is from, I think, Patty McCordy from Netflix. It's all about Netflix's culture, so that's a great book. There's another one called The Culture Code. You can check that one out too. And I also really liked Tony Hsieh's book. This is back in the day, Delivering Happiness. It's still a book that I remember. And then there's another book that he recommended called Tribal Leadership, which talks about the different levels of your, how your culture is, right? Do people think they're good? Does the team think they're good? And, is there like a worldly purpose, right? I think those 4 are a good starting point.
Love it. I just recommended Tribal Leadership to my client yesterday because it is, you don't realize that your culture kind of sucks until you're in it and you're like, I didn't do a good job yet, right? And so trying to manage and mitigate, and it's a whole separate learning curve, right? As a business owner, it's nuts.
Yeah. We're constantly managing it too. Like we use an employee engagement software called 15.5.
Oh, nice.
So there's that. And then we just send out an employee engagement survey. We'll send it out every like 6 months or so. So we're constantly on top of it. And then the happy hours, the lunches, like all these little things, like they add up. And like I can see it happening in the employee engagement survey. So all the little things that you do, it's just the same thing as like building a relationship with your spouse too. You're constantly dating, right? If you're doing something special every week, there's something bigger every quarter, and then maybe there's something every year too. But if you don't think about it in that way, if you don't think about constantly nurturing it, it's just going to decay.
Yes. And people don't think about, when we think about ROI, it's like, well, what am I putting in and what am I getting out? But some of it is kind of intangible, like the bonds that you actually have with your employees. I love that you do a survey so you can actually check in on some of this stuff too. It makes it way easier, I'm sure, for you to actually look at and see.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. Okay. So how long have you been implementing 15.5 and where do we find out more? Because I've definitely heard a lot about it.
Yeah, 15.5 is great. Just go to 15, so the number 15 and then spell out 5, 15.5.com. We've actually been using it, I think, the last 3-4 years or so. And basically what it does, like you enter in how you're feeling each week, what you got done. You can high five other people, and then you can see the high fives showing up in our Slack channel too. So it just creates this cycle where like the cycle of happiness, where everyone's kind of, feeling good about each other.
Right? Because especially if you have to deal with crappy clients, nobody's happy. me, right? That's
Yep.
fine. Move up to enterprise clients, make your employees happy. You're doing a
Yep.
pretty good job. That's what it sounds like you've been doing, which is awesome.
Mhm.
I know we have to start wrapping up. What is one action after all of this that listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
Yeah, I mean, if you know, the path to 1 million is finding the one thing that works and just repeating it, right? So I think it's focus, because actually I looked at on the flight the other day, I was looking at I was scrolling through my Apple Notes, and I looked at something I said in like 2011 or 2012. And then my goals for the year is like there's this income goal, and then there's like 5 separate things that I wanted to work on like each month. Here's the goal this month, and it's like completely different. It's not in the same area. And in the very beginning, the luxury you have is time, but that's also a double-edged sword. So I think focusing on one thing, making it work, and then letting it compound, and then being patient with it. Obviously, be smart. Like if it's like a dud, it's a dud, right? And I know most people have a sixth sense about it. But I think that'll be the one thing, because everyone says it, right? Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, all these people. But not enough emphasis goes on focus.
And doing it is very different than just pretending or thinking about it, right? It makes a huge, huge difference. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming on the show today. Where can we find the podcast and all the agency info online?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to Marketing School, or you can go to Growth Everywhere. Those are the podcasts. And then you can also, agency side, you can go to singlegrain.com, and then also our software side, clickflow.com. Anything you want to check out, you can also just, DM me on Instagram. It's at Eric Siu, with the O in the middle.
I love it. Thank you for all the tactics and the tips and the real tangible information. I really appreciate it. Have an amazing day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening and investing in yourself with your time. I so appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be forever grateful if you would be willing to leave a rating or review in whatever app you use for your podcast. I know that's what really bumps it up in the rankings. And I would so appreciate your time, especially if you've been a long time listener. But of course, if you like this episode and you're brand new, thank you for being here too. Have an amazing, amazing day.